Man, my volume is still on. What's up? Hey. Good evening. This is Clifton Johnson, as you know, with the Empower Series podcast. I want to say hello to my viewers in the United States and around the world. I am trying to turn my volume off here so we don't get any echoes, and I just did it. So I am excited today, as you can probably tell. We are going to go deep dive into the wonderful experience of storytelling. If you've ever had an idea that you have a book in you and you just didn't know where to start, this is the podcast for you. So like I always say, subscribe to us, like us, comment, share us with somebody else, because the only way people are going to find out about the Empower Series is if you share it with them. So as we go deep, I have a very special guest. He's a multiple Empower Series speaker, and he's more than just an author, y'all. He's in financial services. He's an expert in sales. He's not only written a number of books, but he is like just fabulous. He'll do a better job in telling you all that he does, but we're so fortunate that he's here to help us and to guide us through the process, that if you are already an experienced writer or if you're just starting, he's going to give you some tips and some insights that can help you get that story out of you. So go ahead, get your pens and paper ready. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce him. His name is Maymi. Jay, welcome to the Empower Series for the time, right?
Yes, I love coming back, so just keep inviting me and I'll show up.
Hey man, I love the fact that you want to help people not just survive, but to thrive,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And so that's what we're all about at the Empower Series. So we've had a conversation a couple of times about getting books out, right? And I don't know if everybody needs to be an author, but we all have a story that's worth telling.
Absolutely.
And I say that there's 8.12 billion people in the world. Each one of us is unique, and the world is waiting for us to make our mark. So there's someone out there that's waiting for our message. There's someone out there that's waiting to be touched. And a book is a great way of making that difference. And we don't know, it could save a life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, everybody has value. Everyone's got a story. And sometimes people don't take that leap of faith in writing it out because they automatically disqualify themselves by thinking, who's going to read my story? But everybody has something to share that I think another person can benefit from.
So you are an author of what, 10 books? How many books? Who's counting, right?
Yeah, well, 10, 11's coming up, and a bunch of white papers and a bunch of other things that just aren't published works, but you could find them anywhere online.
Well, you do a lot. And so I want you to give a brief resume, because I know we talked about you getting back into being a bodybuilding, right? On that stage, you are an expert when it comes to sales. So you do a lot of talks for companies and organizations around sales, whether it's real estate or any financial services, whatever it is. But you write a lot about leadership as well.
Correct.
And growth mindset. So that's one thing you do. But you also do financial services. So introduce yourself to the wonderful community of the Empower Series.
Well, you know, I think the best way people can get a chance to know a little bit more about me is I was having a Zoom meeting today, one-on-one with someone who I met at a networking event. And after she had a chance to share with me her story and what she does, she said, well, tell me a little bit about you. And I said to her, I won't mention her name, but I said to her, look, I'm the easiest guy to figure out what I do because I have the Maymi highway. People say, stick to your lane, right? You've heard that cliche, hey, stay to your lane, stick to your lane, don't do too much. And I agree, you should stick to your gifts and talents, but not in one lane. Create the highway that allows for multiple lanes of your gifts and talents, but as long as you stay on the same highway, it's okay to develop multiple lanes because every lane is an expression of a gift and a talent that you have.
Right.
Just stay on the same highway and don't go off the off-ramp, because that's when you find yourself in trouble. So when people look at me, I say, listen, at the end of the day, I am a guy who's been passionate about seeing other people have progress. People have personal development and growth. So whether it's in family and relationships, whether it's in business, whether it's in academics, in health and fitness, right? Mindset, a lot of psychology I write about, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in corporate environment. It's about making sure that I leave my mark where people are a little bit better off than before I showed up in different areas and different expressions of life. That's what Maymi is all about.
Okay, like I said, help people not just survive, but thrive.
Exactly.
Right? So what we're going to do then, just kind of to define the lane that we're in tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about the 10 steps to really get this book that's inside of you out.
Correct.
And different things that people may run into, like writer's block, how you get over it. But let's first start with just what inspired you to write your first book?
You know, I got to tell you something. I believe that everyone has a calling. And oftentimes we just aren't aware of it. It keeps tapping us on the shoulder. We know we're supposed to be somebody and do something and write something or sing something. And whether it's through distractions or whether it's through discouragement or delays or disappointments, we never get around to doing it. So my first book came because I was coming home from the gym. It was a Monday morning, and my wife will attest to this because she saw my face. And I was doing my Monday morning routine, Clifton. I got into the shower, and all of a sudden, if you are a spirit-filled person, you would understand when I said the Holy Spirit got a hold of me. And it's the last thing I thought I was going to be doing on a Monday. Usually Monday in financial services, you are very busy. You've got an agenda. I've had my list of calls to make.
Right.
The last thing I was thinking about doing was sitting down and starting to write chapters of a book.
Yeah, yeah.
But I felt so inspired, so motivated. I just so tugged at. I knew I had to do it. So I sat down at the kitchen table, just old-fashioned notebook leaflets, started to jot down ideas, and those ideas, I wrote 7 chapters in like an hour and a half. It was a devotional. And I wrote a book called The Common Man's Devotional, because at the time I was a director of a men's ministry.
Okay.
So I knew that I was supposed to write that because it flowed.
Got you. Yeah.
I didn't have stagnation. The minute I put my pen down, it was, and I just knew this was, you know, what you would call just an anointed work. I had to do it.
Yeah.
And literally an hour and a half later, I had 7 chapters written. They needed to be edited and cleaned up, but the essence of those chapters were written. And my wife says to me, she says, Jay, when you got out of the shower, you look like a ghost. You look like a guy who's seen a ghost.
Got you, yeah.
I knew that I had to get to working on that. And that inspiration, I believe, was more of a calling, of a spiritual inspiration, because that book went on to help a lot of men. And even to this day, that book is still read by a lot of people. I was able to bring that book into the prison when I was doing prison ministry in New York.
Right.
It became an access point to get in front of guys through other ministries that I probably would have never gotten in front of had I not written that book.
And that book is touching lives that you're not even aware of.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that inspired you, and it's great to hear that story, because there's some people, just like you might hear of an artist who wrote a song in like just like that, because it, you know, it's not about us writing this song, but it's like something is coming through us.
Correct.
To be written, right?
Correct.
That being said, have all of your books been that easy? Or, you know, has it taken some other, you had a different process or a different experience in writing some of the other 9 books?
Every book a person writes, you go through a different process, a different experience, different set of emotions, different thoughts, different disciplines. Every book is different.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but it is. So anyone who writes one book and thinks that the second book or the third book is going to be either as easy, as hard, as, don't even clean the slate, delete the blueprint at the door, and take it with a fresh new approach. Some books I've written at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They took way longer because the only time I had the time to write them was at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And those books, usually I struggled with clarity because I was tired, right? Here's the one thing, though, that I will always caution people that are thinking about writing a book.
Okay.
Don't get caught up with don't overthink the process. Because even to this day, and anybody who's written books, unless you're a successful best-selling author who has a track record of books like a Bill O'Reilly or one of these guys, or Rowling, you know the book's going to be a success. It's going to be read. But when you're not there, the mental fight you're going to have to settle with is the ongoing question, that gnawing question, who's going to read it?
Right, right.
Why am I doing this? Who's really going to read
Who's your
it?
target, right?
Not the target.
Oh, just who's
You can have a target, but you'll question, is anybody really going to read it?
Oh, I got what you're saying. Yeah.
Right? I'm not spending all this time writing all this stuff, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm taking time away from building my business and my family and all this stuff for what? Who's really going to read it? I always said, and I learned a long time ago, that's none of my business.
Yeah.
When I was, and I learned a lesson right from the get-go.
We'll make a note of that. Hold on.
It's none of my business. When I was writing that first book, Clifton, as I was putting it together, all I kept thinking about was, who in the world's going to read this book? And the answer I got back was, it's none of your business. It's none of your business.
Right.
Just write the book. Somebody's going to read the book. It's none of your business.
Well, let me tell you what. So a lot of people are probably watching right now, and I'm going to share a story about my aunt, right? My Aunt Zelma, much love. I'm giving you another shout out. Right on, right on. And so some people are so busy just living their life. They're not aware of the importance of documenting their life. You know, you probably heard that a life worth living is worth recording.
Correct.
And so I would say, regardless of who's going to read anything, all of our lives are worth recording. We are all going through certain experiences, and those experiences can be great universal lessons for other people. And so I remember in 2014, so my uncle, I was just telling you about my uncle, who has done a lot of significant work in collegiate athletics, was here in Dallas, and he was actually an Empower Series speaker. And so if people look out there, you'll see on the YouTube channel, Dr. James Frank, the Empower Series, you'll get a lot of results, but you'll see a program that was done at the African American Museum, and Lynn Hayes interviewed him because of all of the work and contributions he's made to collegiate athletics. And so after that event, we were all at Whataburger, because my aunt likes Whataburger, right? And we were sitting around talking, and they were talking about books that my Uncle Jim was in the process of writing. My Aunt Zelma had already written her autobiography, but you know, we're not going to talk much about that. And so my uncle was just sitting there, and I was kind of encouraging him to write a book. And I said, Unc, look, you are like the first who, in so many different areas, either you're going to write your book, or someone's going to write a book about you, right? And later on that year, my aunt and my uncle started the process of documenting just his accomplishments. And she did that really for the family, just to make sure that family knew what my Uncle Jim had accomplished, to be an inspiration to the family. And it has grown into a full-blown book called Seasons of the Journey.
Wow.
The biography of Dr. James Frank. And you can go to the website, Dr. James Frank, and find out more about what he's accomplished. But I bring this as an example that my aunt took the time, started in 2016. It was just self-published in 2023. And it's a great piece of work. And when you look at what he has accomplished, because he always downplayed what he did. But when you read the book, you'll be inspired. And when I asked my aunt, how does she feel about writing this book, and what does she want people to feel, she said a lot about what you're all about. She says, I want people to feel inspired to begin documenting the seasons of their journey, because we all have them.
Right.
There are ups and downs, and in here are lessons. So just real briefly, my uncle has done a lot, but one of the most significant things that he's done, he was the first African-American president of the National Collegiate Athletic Association. And many people don't know that there was a brother who was running pretty much collegiate athletics for the whole United States.
Wow.
And all that he has done in that organization, a lot of it, the organization is benefiting from today. But if you go to the website, Dr. James Frank, you'll find out more. But I share that story with you because there's other people out there right now just thinking, like you said, why am I going to write about myself? Who's going to read it, right? And so I want you to talk about, what do you advise people who are at that point? They're not sure if they should write something. You know, they don't think that they've done anything really significant. How would you coach them or encourage them to just begin writing?
I would say to them a couple things. Number one, don't second guess your value. Don't second guess your worth. Don't second guess your life. everyone has done something that another person can relate to. Everyone's been able to face an adversity they've gone through. Everyone's been able to help someone else through something that they're going through. So the point is, you might look at your life because you're in your shoes and find that there's nothing that you bring to the table, but you don't have to bring the whole table.
Right.
Just bring the corner
Bring
of
your
it.
point, right?
Just bring a little splinter of it.
Yeah.
Because that's all that splinter might be the very thing this other person needs to hear and know more in order to progress in their life, in order to figure out a problem that you've, a solution to a problem that you figured out 20 years ago.
Right on. Yeah.
You know, I was talking to a woman not too long ago who is a single mom right here in Dallas. Single mom of an autistic child. And she's questioning whether she wants to write a book, like 99% of most people. I said, why would you not want to write a book as a single mom who was dealing with the abandonment, no financial support, and you're raising an autistic daughter? Who other out there, what other woman out there would not want to read how you're getting through it?
Yeah.
What other woman out there wouldn't want to read who maybe has a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old daughter, how to deal with the teenage years of an autistic child as a single mom? Everyone has value. So the first thing I would encourage people is don't second guess it. And the truth is, these days with technology and all sorts of other resources and support, you don't have to second guess whether, hey, my grammar is not great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, you know, maybe years ago, but not today, because someone else can help you with the grammar. It's your story that matters.
And so what do you think about someone who's, I'm just not a good writer? I think keeping a journal is important. So whether it's an oral journal or a written journal, but keeping a journal of your daily experiences can be very helpful if you're even questioning, well, what lessons have I experienced in life, right? Just writing that down is not only beneficial for yourself, but it'll give you some good data to kind of start with if you're questioning, what do I even write a book about?
Absolutely. And the other component of that is you may not write a book that has anything to do with your own personal life, but as you and I talked about, right? You may write a book that is a compilation of the stories of others
That have inspired you?
that have inspired you.
So that you've learned something
yeah,
from?
Right.
Right.
Or other people who have come up with solutions to problems that most people face. I'm working with a guy right now, and his book is called the Book of Hacks. Hacks. So if your light switch goes off, hack. How do you, in your tire, in your chain, if you have a bike, the bike chain, how do you hack it so that it doesn't rust? And he just puts electric tape. Hacks.
It's a little thing that he's come up with, right?
Right. So that's that's what he's bringing to the table in his book, is the Book of Hacks. Somebody's going to read that.
Okay.
Just to figure out how to cook an egg, whatever he's doing in that book. I'm buying the book. When he showed me that little trick with the tape that you put it on, the electric tape, put on a bike chain so the chain doesn't rust.
Yeah.
Genius. He's writing a book about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's always something you could bring to the table, either of yours or somebody else's.
All right, so let's dive in. Let's dive in. You said there's 10 steps. So take us through as many of the steps as you can with the time that we have.
Okay.
But what's step one?
First step, I think you have to decide that you're going to do it.
Okay, I'm
Right.
going to take notes, right?
Take notes. Take notes.
And you all should be taking notes too, right? I'm modeling the behavior. So step number one?
You have to decide that you're going to do it. Now, what the do is doesn't have to be clarified just yet. There's too much pressure in trying to figure out from the get-go what your book is going to be about. And that's probably one of those handicaps that people will find themselves struggling with. They already want to have the topic that the book is written about. You don't have to have a topic. You could research the topic that you're going to be most passionate about. And again, it could be your own personal story, or it might be something else you're passionate about. You might be passionate about a moment in time in history that you think isn't covered by the academic world. You might be passionate about sports figures who overcame handicaps. You want to highlight those. The point is, you want to decide you're going to write it. Don't get caught up with what I'm going to write about. That's second.
Okay. I was going to ask you that because one decision is that I'm going to write a book. Then the second, what I'm going to write a book about. So the first step is not deciding what you're going to write a book about, because you can write a book about anything.
Correct.
But I am going to write a book. I'm going to put pen on paper and put my thoughts on pages, and it's going to bless somebody's life. Make that decision, period.
That's
Drop
the first
mic.
one.
Okay.
Without that firm decision, you've got nothing. You've got a wish, right? And 20 years later, you still got a wish.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The second thing is you have to become crystal clear as to why you're going to do it.
Got it.
Because when you're up late at night and you're trying to figure out what I'm going to write, if you don't have a solid why, then you are going to give in to the temptations to quit, right? I had a conversation with someone not too long ago, and I asked him that question. I said, why you want to write this? And he didn't have a solid answer. So I said, hey, our coaching stops right here. Come back when you've got your why.
Right, right.
And it can't be I want to make money, because your
Yeah.
book you may not have a bestseller.
Got it, got
Give
it.
me something else other than I want to be a bestseller. Chances are you're not going to be a best. So why? There's 3 reasons why people write books. Now, so in case for those that might be a little fuzzy, I'll
Yeah.
give you the 3. Number 1 is part of leaving a legacy.
Got
And
it.
that's a good why. Sometimes people struggle with why because they're not crystal clear. They haven't drilled down on it. The first why is you're leaving a legacy that will outlive you.
Gotcha.
Your grandchildren's grandchildren at some point will still have access to a book you wrote 100 years earlier. That's a nice legacy. Your 3rd generation to the 4th generation to the 5th generation doesn't have to wonder or question, how did great-great-great-grandpa J. Maymi think? It's in his books.
Got it. Yeah.
Right? So there's a bonding that occurs generationally. You leave a legacy that outlives you. You could leave behind not a nickel, but you leave behind a handful of books. That's a legacy. The second is for business purposes. Access. If you are writing a book that is to further you as a professional, as a subject matter expert, then a book gives you access to audiences to promote your book, and promote your service.
Got it.
And the last thing is for personal life resume. Sometimes people want to write a book just to say, I did it. And sometimes I did it, it's just enough.
Got it. Just because, right?
Just because, hey, I've got a resume that I want to have that is going to be full of wonderful experiences, that one day when I'm getting ready to check out, when my light switch is about to be turned off, I can look back at my life resume and say, man, that's a robust resume. Look at this life I lived.
Yeah.
That's an empowering reason to write something.
So those are good 3 reasons. At the end of the day, you got to have a reason, and to your point,
Correct.
it's going to get tough.
Correct.
And if you don't have a compelling reason, you're going to easily stop.
Correct.
Right? So that's step number 2. Have a clear reason, write it down. Thank you for the tips on what the top 3 could be, right?
That's right.
All right.
And then the third, that gets into the research.
Okay.
What are people reading? And if I'm going to write a book about my personal story, that's fine. But what's the message? No one's going to read a book about your personal story. No one's interested in your biography unless there is a message to it. So what's the message of the book? What's the purpose of that book? And I'm going to give you some purposes for some people to consider. Is it a book to inspire? Is it going to be a book to inform and educate? Is it going to be a book that just leaves behind insight and wisdom?
Like universal lessons.
Correct.
Right?
What's the purpose of the book? Once you make a decision, I'm going to do it. Once you're crystal clear on why, and once you know this is the message I'm leaving behind, this is the theme, now you begin to find your roadmap.
Yeah. And just to add to this, so you have inspiration, information, lessons. It could be whatever impact people want to make. It could be funny, right?
Correct.
The funny things in life or whatever that might be, but you got to have a reason, and that's going to help you kind of guide and come down to what you're going to write about. Because we still haven't decided what we're going to write about yet. We're just getting these things like I'm deciding to write. I got a clear reason why I want to write. I got to do the research, like, you know, what's the impact of what I want to get across. Haven't decided yet what you're going to write about, but you know these three things, that gives you a good start.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
You know, I have a fellow who I'm coaching now who's a comedian, and he wants access to more bookings. So I said to him, write a book about jokes.
Right.
I said, well, he says, I don't think I have that many jokes. I said, who says they have to be your jokes? You want to be known as the funny person? Write a book that make other people laugh. They're not going to care whether or not they're your personal jokes or they belong to someone that you heard 10 years ago.
Right.
If it makes them laugh, then write it and then leverage that book to get in front of more audiences and more bookings.
And then you'll have more jokes.
Right, and then you'll have more jokes, right? So it's very, very important. And those are the three things I always encourage people to do during coaching. Let's get crystal clear on that. And the rest of it, it becomes drilling down on some other components. Believe it or not, number 4, and this is where people say, what? I say, pick a date of release. Like, but I don't even have, just pick a date of release. When will people be able to buy your book?
You got to have the end in mind,
Correct.
right? Otherwise,
exactly
it could
right.
take, I'm like 69 years old. No,
That's exactly. Yeah,
but it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how old you are when you start.
Doesn't matter.
But you got to have a date that you're going to be done.
Correct.
I got you on that.
Yeah, towards the end of, as we get a chance to finish this list, hopefully we'll figure out why dates are important when you look at throughout the year, perfect times to release a book.
Okay, yeah.
There's good times and there's times you waste your time. Not that you waste your time, but you won't get as much traction. But you have to pick the date because your mind, from a psychological standpoint, will not stay disciplined enough if you don't have a date to give it.
And you can create systems around that. I'm not sure if this is some of the other steps, but some people are thinking, oh man, it's such a big book. But if you break it down now, you know when the date is, you can say, I need to write X number of pages a day or whatever to get to this end date and have a book done.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
I always encourage folks who are writing their first book, don't get in over your head with writing a book that's over 100 pages. Even if you have the kind of content that merits 100 pages or more, number one, we don't live in an age where people read more than 70 or 80 pages anyway. We're TikTok readers.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right. So if you're writing
Big
a book,
print,
what's that?
Big print.
Big print, small, big
pages.
spacing in the middle. Each line is about that much space,
Yeah,
right? 60 pages, 70 pages, 80 pages for your initial book, it's good. The more you think about writing as an untrained writer, the chances are you'll start to wander. And you get writers wandering because you've got so much you want to write about. You're thinking about this book that's 100, 125, 130 pages because maybe you look at the other guy's book and say, oh, my book has to be that thick in order to be valuable. Well, no, because the book that you're trying to write that's 120, 30 pages may not be in line with someone else who wrote a book that the topic is different, worthy of 130 pages. But if you're an untrained writer, the more pages, the more wandering, and the more the reader is left
get lost.
thinking, where is this person going?
Right.
And then you get too many fillers, and then it loses the essence of the message.
Yeah.
60, 70, 80 pages, anybody can read that and recommend it to somebody else.
Yeah, that probably is releasing a lot of the stress right now of some people
Correct.
watching, thinking, oh man, I got to watch it. Like, how many different chapters, how many pages? But 60, 70, 80 pages is not a lot.
It's not a lot.
Right.
And let me give you some gold. I'll give you some gold. Okay? If you believe that you have that many pages, that much content to fill a book of 130, 40, 50 pages, then write a series.
Oh my gosh, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you got 150 pages worth of content, volume 1. 70 pages,
You know,
volume 2.
And a concept of a series, you remember Don't Sweat the Small Stuff?
Yeah.
So the whole series, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for teens. Don't sweat the
Right.
small stuff, make money.
Right.
You know, don't sweat the small stuff, like all of the different things you can talk about. So you got a good point. Just start with getting something out there, and I like it. I mean, I hope you guys are taking notes. I'm taking notes, modeling what I want you to do. Okay, go ahead.
Right, so then again, you stay within your reasonable lane of writing a book, your first one, and you can always create second pages.
Okay.
After you recognize the pages then and your topic, then the next thing is start writing your synopsis.
Okay, so I want to make sure we're good here. So on the fourth one was pick a date.
Pick a date.
And then you said topic. So are you narrowing down, what your topic is in step 5? Or?
Correct. Well, by the
Okay.
time you get to step 4, you should know your topic.
Okay, got
Okay,
it.
you should figure that out by step 3 or so, right?
So you're clear on your topic. And then
Yeah.
step 5 is
Yeah,
the synopsis.
and you might have 2 or 3 topics that you're toying with, and when you start to consider which of those topics, number one, you'll be more excited about writing.
Okay.
You'll be more eager to start writing even if you're tired because hey, I like this topic. Then you pick that one. But you got backup topics in case the first one that you choose, maybe you don't find enough information on it.
Right.
You say, well, I'll just scratch this one and go to the next one.
And so your synopsis or summary.
Your
basically.
synopsis is your summary, right? So now,
Yeah.
once you know this is what I'm going to write about, then you want to be able to summarize that for your own sake in a synopsis. A synopsis is what goes in the back of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody picks up the book, they say, oh, so that's what this book is about?
what's it
Great, it's a
about?
guideline.
Got it. Okay.
Because if you don't have yourself on a guideline, then it's easy to go all over the place and include content that really shouldn't be in that book.
Okay. Got it.
Got it?
So go ahead. So step 6, I was going to ask you a question. Go ahead and tell me what the next step is. Once you got a
Well, I tell you
synopsis.
what, go ahead and ask the
Okay.
question because
So sometimes they say, okay, now, at what point do you identify what the chapters are? Because someone said, okay, identify what the chapters are, and then what you can do over time is as you're researching things, you can get articles, get research, and make some notes, and kind of put them into the categories of the chapters. Is that somewhere in your 10 steps?
absolutely, that's
Okay.
what's coming up next,
All right.
right? The next, and this is all probably in step 5, is you have to pick your title
Okay.
because your title is what keeps you in alignment with your synopsis, and your synopsis keeps you in alignment with your title. Now, a title can change.
I was going to say, no, pick a title, but it can still change.
can change.
Nothing's in concrete
Correct.
right now.
A
Okay.
synopsis can change.
Got it.
As you're developing your writing, you might say, I want to change the title because I'm leaning more towards this angle much more than I were in the beginning, than I was in the beginning. Okay, change the title. Okay. But here's what I always encourage people to do. Work on the cover.
Oh, also in step 5, cover,
Yeah.
title, and
Work
cover.
on the cover.
Which is a creative process that, again, you might have different iterations of.
Correct.
And as you're taking me through this, I remember what my aunt was doing. She was writing the book. There's many times that she had sent, drafts out to different family members to read. When she got to this point, we went over different titles or titles of the book, and then the covers of the book. So I got you on that. And it can change over time.
It can change over time, but here's what that does. Now you've got a date, now you've got a synopsis, now you've got a title, and you've got a book cover. Who's that anchoring to make sure the book gets done?
Yeah.
You.
Right.
Because when you see it, wow, that's my book. It's
Now you
not,
put
it's
that
not
on the-
done yet.
You can put it on the vision board now.
Exactly. That goes on your vision board. You walk around with it. You're like, wow. It's tough to not complete that because the person you'll let down above anybody else is you.
Yeah.
Because that's your book. It's only a few months away from somebody reading it. You can't give up on it now. You've got the title. Very important. That step there is very, very important. From a technical standpoint, once you do have your book and title and so on, and you know what it is that it is, then you work with an editor, work with someone who's going to help you get the cover you have to get a copy written. You know, you get it even if it's a logo, a trademark logo. If you're going to make a series out of it, you have to register the book, get your ISBN number.
Do you get that before you've written it, or is that?
Well, no, you definitely want to get once you have your title,
right,
and once you have your your image and you're solid on it. Yeah, you got to start working on your ISBN. You start working. Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
That gets into a whole other conversation of intellectual property. You know, not that anybody's going to read your stuff, but in the further steps down the road, you will have part of those steps is having other people read it.
Okay. So if someone is like now stuck, okay, I got this concept. Now I've got to start putting pen to paper. As a coach, how do you help people or guide people through that process?
So now here's where I ask them, don't go in order of your writing.
Okay.
Because the mind sometimes cannot work in order. Some people can, some people cannot. But if you force your mind to write in A, B, C, in other words, if it's a story about your personal life, it might be tough to start from when I was a teenager and go, that might be tough to do. And it'll read that way when it's all said and done, but maybe you won't write it that way. Maybe you'll write, without knowing it, a storyline or an example or some kind of lesson that becomes chapter 8 when you begin to assemble it. So what I tell people is write rough, just write rough drafts.
So just get words on paper.
Get them down on paper. Start writing. Don't worry about the arrangement. The arrangement can come later once we get a little flow to it. Just start writing. And your writing might be, again, depending on what the person is going to write the book about. Dedicate an hour a day, 2 hours every other day, half hour. It has to be done daily as best possible. Write something. If it's a book that is inspiring, what are the lessons you're looking to learn? If it's an educational book, what's the education today? If it's a joke book, what's the 2-3 jokes today? Write it. Write the content. It can be assembled later.
So step 6 is where the rubber meets the road.
Correct.
It's like, you want to be a writer, what are you writing?
Correct.
And if you're not writing, you're thinking about writing, you're not a writer. Correct. So this is where you're putting words on paper, you're getting it out, whether you're doing voice to text or writing, you're just getting stuff done. And like you said, it's more important to get it out. Don't try to be perfect. Once you got data, you can then work with it, right?
One little hack that I've learned myself is you have your phone. Whenever you're inspired, and that's what's important for writers to know, you're opening up the creative gene, that you're unlocking creativity. At any moment in time, your subconscious mind is not waiting around for you to sit around and write. That's when you get writer's block, because you say, okay, now I'm sitting down, I got my cup of coffee, I've cleared my deck, I'm going to sit down and write, and you blank out. Well, your mind isn't ready yet to produce. It may produce thoughts an hour later. You're in the middle of cooking, or at the gym. Always be ready to take your phone and record yourself, video format, what you will eventually transcribe.
Boom. Hey, so we got some people in live chat. So like, got my cousin from Houston. I got Dion, a volunteer with the Empower series. Is this helpful for you? So if you have any questions as we're going through this, please ask your questions and let us know, is this stuff really valuable for you? Is it helping you move forward? So I like the idea of, being able to capture that in a moment. Because creativity is not on your time schedule, right? It happens all the time. Especially, there's so many times where I woke up in the middle of the night, had this dream, and I'm thinking, oh man, that was such a great dream. I want to write that down, but I'm a little bit too sleepy to get up and write. But if I could okay, just talk it out, that would be good.
Correct.
Because so many times I said, okay, that was such a crystal clear dream. It's important for me to remember. And then I say, okay, let me sleep for 10 more minutes, and then I'll get up and write it out. And then I wake up going, what?
No, that's a lost cause right there.
Oh my gosh, I remember those days, those nights. So yeah, that's great. This is great information about just putting things on paper and writing daily and not really being concerned. I like that. I love it. This is good stuff, man. And so when you're coaching someone, you can't write for them.
Correct.
You're simply coaching and you're giving them some direction. So have you run across anybody that you're giving this coaching to, but they're just not doing it? Like in any sport, coach can give you a play, but it's about execution. So how do you help people who are not really executing on the guidelines that you're giving them?
Oftentimes when a person doesn't complete their assignments, I give them assignments. And plenty of time to finish the assignment because it starts off as a hobby, right?
Yeah.
So it's not to overburden or overwhelm them with the busyness of what else they've got going on. But if I give someone a 2-week assignment, and I say, I'm gonna come back and check in on you, and you haven't done that yet, okay, we'll go another week. But ultimately, if I see that you're not accomplishing simple assignments, then I've got to realize, okay, where's the struggle here? And let's revisit your why.
I was just going to say that. Is the why strong enough?
Yeah, right. Maybe it's not strong enough. Maybe you thought it was strong enough, and maybe it's not, because it's reflective on you not doing your assignment.
Yeah.
Or it could be something that deals a little bit deeper, and that is usually disbelief. Questioning again whether or not anyone's going to read it, running out of gas, running out of content steam, which could be revitalized instantly. People just don't know how to maneuver that and how to sort of recreate and get that that creative machine moving again.
Okay.
But there's something there that has to be fine-tuned.
So step number 6 is again is writing. Rearranging things is in step number 6 as well.
Correct.
But once you've got like the first draft of the manuscript done, and it may take some time in step 6, then what are the other steps after that? Let's say you got this first draft already done. What's the next steps in
Somebody else has to read your book.
Okay.
And it's not a book yet, it's just a rough draft, a manuscript, it's just raw material. But it's arranged in a way that starts to look like a flowing piece of literary work.
And so that can be referred to as editors, because there's different types of editors.
Not so much an editor. An editor will come towards the very end. Somebody who's going to say to you, and when I do coaching, I'm the toughest critic. I said, let me read what you've got, and I'm going to give you my input as a third-party reader who doesn't really have any connection with you. Or you can have somebody who you trust is going to be honest and tell you, hey, this is great. Yep, it needs cosmetic work, but I like where you're going with it. Or you can have someone that says, if they're honest, this sucks. It's boring, it's dry, you're all over the place. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Because you don't want to get to the very end and give an editor something. That editor is not going to tell you how to get better at it, they're going to just edit what the book you gave them.
So basically, when you look at different types of editors, you have grammar editors, you have people who might rearrange things, but they're not going to give you, to your point, like good feedback on overall, how does this read?
Right.
Is it a page turner?
Correct.
Right, and so when you look at those kind of people, is it basically your friends, your circle of friends?
Trusted sources.
Okay.
Who are not going to give you sugary answers. They're going to be very real. And you only really need 2 or 3 of those. You don't need to give that manuscript to a number of people, because 2 or 3, if
they're real close and honest friends,
yeah, if they're all pretty much giving you the same feedback and is consistent and congruent, that hey, this is good, keep going, or hey, this it's not captivating enough, then whoever else reads is going to give you the same feedback.
Man, to me this is great. I hope you guys are finding a lot of benefit in this. So step is decide you're going to write a book. Number 2, get very clear on your why. Number 3, do your research about what the message is going to be, whether the message is some principle or some inspiration or information or lesson. When you look at your whys, it could be, I want to leave a legacy, I need it as a business tool to get me in the door, show my expertise. So just like I'm checking it off my bucket list, right? Personal list. And then the cool thing is picking a date. So like a dream or a goal without an end date is just like a wandering generality, right?
Exactly, it's exactly right.
So great to have an end date. I'm going to get this book out by whatever date you pick. It doesn't have to be 100 or 300 pages. It could be 60, 70, or 80. I like that. That's step number 4. Step number 5 is to do a summary. Create your title, your rough title, have a concept of the cover. Step number 6 is then, okay, get to writing. Start writing every day, right?
Correct.
and just get the stuff out. Don't worry about arranging it. You know, it'll come together later, but you got to have data. It's like somebody who wants to drive a car and they're not starting the car.
Correct.
You know, come on, you get some stuff on paper where you can then start helping them. If they get stuck, how you could get unstuck. And if they're having trouble getting those assignments done, go back and revisit the why, which is why it's so important. Okay, so why are we doing this? You know, what's the motivation? And then also what's important is just setting up systems. Because when you look at people who are really successful, they don't rely on their willpower.
Correct.
They put in systems to make sure that they're guided and they don't, like, it's not a choice, right? Because there's some days you might choose that you don't want to, but being disciplined and consistent is very important.
Absolutely.
And then step number 5 is once you've got the bulk of your book written and you feel like it's good, give it to a circle of friends who are going to give you some honest feedback on it.
Correct.
I like that. I
Correct.
like that. So we got 3 more steps, man.
3 more steps, yeah. You know, and there's, in between those steps, as you were recapping, there's sub-steps.
Most definitely, most definitely.
And
yeah.
that's sort of where you know, there's only so much time we can get into the conversation. But there's sub-steps to that is part of the process.
Okay. And so after you get some friends reading it, they're going like, man, this is a bomb book.
Right.
What do you do next?
Well, at that point now, you start to really finalize it, the flow.
Okay.
What's the intro, the body, the closing? What are the closing points? What do I want to make sure that I'm crystal clear that the reader walks away with the point I'm trying to get across. That has to be front and center.
Like, how do you take them through this dance? Right?
Correct.
How do you take them through this, it's an emotional experience too, right?
Correct.
Because a lot of times I find with great writers, going back to storytelling, when you're reading, they're not just telling you, they're painting a picture.
Correct.
They're painting the picture physically, like visually, sensory, like they're really making you feel like you're there. Mm-hmm. And then you're following them in the emotional roller coaster of what's going on. And then you're coming out of it inspired, uplifted, or whatever the emotion that the book is giving you. My question here too is that, does this process work for fiction and nonfiction books?
It works for anything, because every book, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whether it's historical, there's something that the reader has to walk away with that they didn't have prior to the first page. Mm. That's what makes the book memorable.
Yeah, yeah.
I read a lot. I like history books. One of my favorite writers is Bill O'Reilly, because he writes history. And he goes, it's clear-cut, fun, simple reading. I always walk away learning something about history I didn't know. I look forward to that. Yeah. I look forward to personally feeling better about my academic development, because I know I'm going to get it from that book. Mm-hmm. If you read a book and you walk away thinking to yourself, I'm no better off after I've read the book than I was before, except now I'm 2 weeks older.
Yeah.
Right? Well, then mission was not accomplished by the writer. You didn't. No one's moved. No one's changed. So it doesn't matter. Every book, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, has a message that it's going to leave behind. Yeah. Make sure you're crystal clear on that message. Yeah,
which is your step number 3.
Correct.
Know what your message is, right?
Right. Got to know what your message is, and at that step 6, after you've combined your book, does it leave that message behind? Yeah. Is it clear? Is it muddied? Or does it need supporting content?
So I know that there is a writer, Shaka Senghor, who's a Power Series speaker. Mm-hmm. He wrote a book, Righting My Wrong, and My Wrongs. And when he first came out of prison, he self-published it. And when he got on Oprah and blew up, and Oprah put her touch on it, they republished the book with a new publisher. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me, man, it's really interesting how you get gripped with the words that you've used, because they wanted him to change certain things, the way he was saying things, which is pretty much what you're saying, like the flow of things, the flow of the body. I don't know specifically what was being asked to change, but as a writer, you've got to realize that once you kind of put all of your stuff out there and you have a purpose and a message you want to convey, there's different ways of conveying that message.
Correct.
Right, and you may have to be willing to let go of the words that you wrote down without changing your spirit and your sound. But if it conveys the message in a better way because people can follow it, you got to be open to that, right?
So that's a component, that's an underlying component that becomes what I call a toxic trait.
Talk to me about that.
Pride.
Yeah, okay. Now I got you. I'm hearing you now. Right.
It's like, hey, your book is great, but if we change this, change that, it doesn't lose the essence of you. It doesn't lose the essence of your book, but that you get to this, and the author or the writer says, no, it's got to be this way. No, or if it's not going to be done that way, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
Why? What's more important for you, that it's written in the way that you want it to be written, or that it's written in a way that the reader will be blessed by it?
Right.
And if you're that staunch, because it's got to be your way or the highway, that's a big problem.
All right. So what are the last 2 steps?
Okay. So you've got now the next step is marketing.
Marketing. Okay.
Once your book is set and looks good, people say, well, I got to get the whole book ready to go. No, you start marketing your book, and there's different ways to market your book. And one of those nice ways is you launch a pre-order campaign.
Okay.
If you know your dates, it's coming up, nothing more than 60 days. Anything longer than that, especially if it's your first book, people are going to question whether that book's going to be, whether you're going to be around. Right?
Gotcha.
And for a lot of other reasons, depending where you go to publish the book and depending where you go to sell it, they won't let you put a book for pre-order anyway until there's almost a complete copy that they can see that is a legit book. Okay. But more than 60 days, you lose credibility anyway.
Gotcha.
But you begin to market the book. You've got a cover now. You've got it. You've honed your message down. Now you can start getting on podcasts and shows and this and that and posting up. There's all sorts of marketing you can do to start getting pre-orders. At that process, the book then can go through the editing. You get together with an editor, let them go through it, let them clean it up. You don't need to have that completed process before you let the world know, my book's coming in 60 days. Click here to pre-order. Here's the synopsis. Here's a little video of me giving my feedback on the book where you could hear from me, the author.
Yeah.
That is part of marketing long before the book is, the stamp of editorial approval per se.
Okay. And so is the last step the publishing or getting it printed, or it's a big umbrella. Like you said, there's a lot of sub-steps.
Right, a lot of sub-steps, right. So the last part is, okay, publishing. Self-publish. Am I going to go with a publishing company? Am I going to give it to Amazon?
Right.
They'll publish it. Every avenue, every option has pros and cons.
And that is like, that whole publishing can be another podcast series.
It's
right?
exactly right. I've learned after 10 books, the high points, the low points, the mistakes, the valley between self-publishing or allowing someone else to publish it. There's pros and cons. It all depends what why? Why am I writing this book?
Okay.
But it's a wonderful journey when you go through it. And for those of you who will do this book, when you open up that box of your books and you see it, it's like having a baby.
Yeah.
9 months, you and your wife, or you're going through this stuff, but when that baby pops out and you're holding the baby, you don't remember the 9 months. You don't remember the challenges.
Yeah.
You just say, I got a baby. This is a baby. It's my baby.
And it's beautiful, no matter how.
Yeah.
No matter what
Same
it
thing
is.
with the book. When you open up that box and you see that book and it's in print, man, and it's got your name on it, and you're like, I did it. And then when somebody reads it and they authentically give you a review or a testimonial that, hey, this is incredible. Thank you. It's a feeling you can't buy anywhere.
So, man, like I said, we can talk all day on this, right? But a couple of questions I've got for you. First off, just to recap, decide you're going to write the book.
Yes.
Make that decision, cut off other options. It will be done. Be clear on your why. It could be a legacy, a business tool to get more business, or personal life. Check off the list. Do your research, right? So what's your purpose? what's the message? Is it inspiring? Is it to inform? Is it a lesson, or just to be fun? Whatever it is, right? So do your research, pick the end date of when it's going to be published, do a synopsis or a summary, create your title as well as your cover. That's a process that's going to be ever changing. So it's a creative process, and then just start writing. Get it out. Get the data on paper, and it can be massaged later, but get it out, and then that will give substance to this idea that you have. And then when you've got enough of it out, then you can start giving it to other people to read.
Correct.
And get their feedback. This is a very similar process that my aunt went through. And then once you got feedback from somebody else, step number 8 is now you can look at how do you want the introduction to flow, the body. You look at the flow to make sure that it's conveying the message in the way that you want it to be conveyed. You can begin the marketing process now. Start speaking about it, getting it out there. Many different ways of marketing it and being creative with it. You start the editing process too in step 9. And then step 10 is actually getting it published, where there's a lot of options, self-publishing or Amazon, etc. So hopefully this has given you, if you're watching, a guide. And I appreciate you just laying this out. But as we know, that it's more involved than just these 10 steps.
Yes.
That's why people get coaches.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
But before we get into how people can get in touch with you to go deeper on this, my question is, what do you tell people who really are experiencing some level of doubt in their abilities? What do you tell people who are experiencing that?
I say, look, well, what's the worst thing that can happen if you try? What's the worst thing that can happen if you sit down, you write it, you get the help to make sure that it goes through, and nobody reads it? Is that so bad if nobody reads it? Because you can say, I did it, nobody read the book, but I did it. And again, maybe you write a book, and I say this very often to people, maybe the book that you wrote wasn't supposed to be read at this time.
Yeah.
Books are eternal. So maybe it's for somebody to read that book 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 25 years from now after you're gone.
Yeah.
Could that be the reason why you wrote this book? Who's to say that you had to write a book for people to read it and be blessed today? I've read books that I found in those book bins and those, those yard sales,
Right.
that were written 30 years ago. I still have them, and I'm like, wow, that's a great book. Well, that author would have never guessed that a guy named Maymi would read his book 30, 40 years later. I read a book called The Power of the Tongue. It was written in like the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
So now you've got something out there. And so what I think is really interesting is you have authors, you have singers, you have actors who leave behind a body of work.
Correct.
And if you're successful in getting your thoughts out on paper and you published a book, then what you've done is you've left a body of work.
Correct.
That can bless future generations long after you're gone. Right?
You make an impact long after you're gone.
Yeah.
Your impact, surpasses you because of what you did. So I tell folks, don't anymore. But worst case scenario, nobody reads it now, but maybe somebody reads it down the road, and you'll never know who that person is.
So how do people get in touch with you, man? If they want to continue this conversation and maybe get your coaching and go deeper on the 10 steps.
They can do that 2 ways, Clifton. They can reach me. My website is J-A-Y, at thejmaymi.com, THEJAYMAYMI. That, they can go there. They'll track me down through my email, which is j@thejmaymi.com. They can go to thejmaymi.com. They can reach me there. I'm easily found. They can Google my name, and there's all sorts of ways to track me down on my Facebook pages, on my LinkedIn, on Instagram. They can track me down through that. I also encourage them to visit polishedpageseditorial.com. I believe you went to the site.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I got a question here too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to ask you a question that somebody's asking.
So that's my wife. My wife is an editor.
She's not asking the question. What did you just say?
No, my wife is an editor.
Oh, okay, cool.
She's behind polishedpageseditorial.com.
Oh, okay,
She's
got
done
it,
all
got
of
it.
my books. She's an absolute pro at it, and she has a free download So she goes through the technical part of the book. Once you kind of get to the stage where you need an editor, she'll provides that in her down. It's a free download book. Gives instructions. So
what I can do is I can put your information underneath
Sure.
the description, and if your wife is okay with it, maybe put a way for them to contact her and get the free download. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's a question that from one of our online viewer or people viewing online, Jay or Jonathan actually, Jonathan Ortiz. As a writer, what are some of the most impactful and influential books that really left a mark in your life?
well, that's a host of them. All of the Norman Vincent Peale books.
Yeah.
Now here's a guy who wrote back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, right? You know, Tom Hopkins, and from the sales standpoint, great books. You know, I've read his stuff. Bill O'Reilly's books have been fantastic. And some of the best books I've read are from unknown, no-name authors. No, they're not celebrity people. You know, they wrote 1 or 2 books. I read a book called The Sloth. It's a fantastic book. It's only about 35, 40 pages, but it nails the behaviors of people who are lackadaisical towards things. And what's the difference between a go-getter and a non-go? So he calls it the sloth. Fabulous book. So, you know, sometimes you can have a celebrity author who makes an impact, but sometimes it's those small one-time, two-time writers, and they're phenomenal. So, yeah. So
Well,
it's a broad array of writers.
Man, I would just want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking your time, a portion of your life, even the time it takes for you to get down here. But man, you know, our collaboration is really, in my opinion, and my hope is inspiring other people to not just survive, but to really thrive, and to realize that they've got what's in them is much greater than anything that they're facing outside of themselves, right? And just push through it. And you're definitely an example of that, right? So if they go to your website and read all the stuff that you're doing, like there's no excuse.
Right, pretty much.
right. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you who are watching. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. Stay connected with us. If you have any questions, you can always email thrive@empowerseries.com. If you have any questions about this podcast, or if you want to make a comment, please do so in the live chat while we're live, or make a comment and share it with other people.
Correct.
Right? This can be a blessing to really help other people. When I look at the reason why we should all be going through the uncomfortableness of getting our thoughts out on paper, at the end of the day, we don't know this, but at the end of the day, the words that are being read by your journey can save a life.
Correct.
And if it can save a life, why are we waiting?
Correct.
Right. So again, I hope this has been very inspirational. You've learned something, giving you hope that you can envision yourself being as an author, open up that book and seeing your little baby book being born.
Correct.
Stay engaged with the Empower series. So follow us on YouTube. And I would say go to our website, www.empowerseries.com. You'll find out more about what we're doing. We just finished our last program for on a monthly basis in this last Saturday. You can watch that on our YouTube channel. But next year, you'll be able to see our schedule January through Thursday. Oh man, what am I doing? January through November, you'll be able to see our schedule. Okay, so stay connected with us. I asked you, if you've been a part of the Empower series, we really love to get your feedback. So in the top right-hand corner, there's a place you can check and take our survey. Please let us know how we've impacted your life, how we can be better in developing programs that's going to be addressing your need and to help empower you. Also, you can give us your contact information if you want to volunteer. And in the top left-hand corner, if you're so inclined, you can also make a donation, because we're providing our services at no cost to all of our attendees, but it does cost to put it on. You can also text GIVE or donate to 214-225-6337. That's 214-225-6337. But whatever you do, get what you're supposed to get from the Empower series. Please share it with somebody else, and then let us know how it has impacted your life. Until we meet again, be empowered and inspired to thrive. Thank you.